guys know about our next speaking event. We will be hosting Charlie Kirk, who is the founder of Transpoint USA, on May 23rd. So if you guys are interested in that, we're going to have the same sign-ups through Eventbrite, and we look forward to seeing everyone there. Tonight, Bruin Republicans at UCLA has the privilege of hosting founder of Prager University and conservative thought leader Dennis Prager on a discussion on the fundamental differences between the left and the right wings of the political spectrum. We would like to thank all of our donors for the continued support that allows us to host such events. Over the course of tonight's program, we anticipate that all members of our audience will uphold our shared true Bruin values and remain courteous and respectful of our speaker and all other guests. As such disruptions will not be tolerated, and in case that anyone presents a direct security threat or violates a student code of conduct, we have UCPD officers on the premise, and we ask you to leave if you do not cease your misconduct following a verbal warning. I would also like to let everyone know about the PragerU Ambassador organization. If you guys are interested in getting involved in that, you can text Prager Force, which is one word, to 64600. To introduce Mr. Prager, please help me welcome our professor advisor, Professor James Instrom.
Thank you very much, Alexis. Before I introduce Dennis Prager, I want to pay a special tribute to the Bruin Republicans for organizing this event, as well as many other interesting and important weekly events. I'm particularly impressed with the courage of the board members who have posted their names and bios on the BruinRepublicans.org website. I'm very worried that they are being monitored by the liberal activists who dominate UCLA in California. It is with great pleasure that I introduce Dennis Prager, who I've known for 20 years. Dennis Prager is one of America's most respected radio talk show hosts, columnist, author, and public speaker. Widely sought after by television shows for his opinions. He's appeared on Fox and Friends, Red Eye, Hardball, Hannity, CBS Evening News, The Today Show, and many others. Mr. Prager is a fellow of Columbia University's School of International Affairs, where he did graduate work in the Middle East and Russian institutes. He's taught Russian and Jewish history at Brooklyn College and was appointed by President Ronald Reagan to the U.S. delegation to the Vienna Review Conference on the Helsinki Accords. In 2011, Mr. Prager co-founded with Alan Estrin Prager University, an institution of higher learning on the internet with a unique difference. All the courses are 5 minutes long. The courses distill the best ideas of the best minds in the world and cover the disciplines of political science, history, philosophy, religion, economics, and psychology. I want everyone in this room to pay special attention to Dennis's talk, Battle of Ideologies, Left versus Right, because we really are engaged in a battle. In addition, I ask everyone in the room, including Dennis, to do as much as possible to promote freedom of speech, academic freedom, and political diversity at UCLA. The latest attack on a UCLA conservative is happening in this very building, where communications professor Keith Fink is about to lose his job because he gives politically incorrect lectures. I close this introduction with the famous quote from the 18th century British parliamentarian Sir Edmund Burke. Quote, "All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing," unquote. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Dennis Prager.
I have two reactions. Are we doing okay on this? No. We will How are we doing? No? Should I use the other mic? Be better now? Yeah, no? Because UCLA doesn't have a big enough budget. I totally understand why it's problematic. So now we'll use this? Is this better? Yeah. We'll find out. I'll turn this off. Better? No. Is that better?
Being sabotaged.
No, not good. That's not working, and this is reverberating. Well, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
All right, when it works, it works. So I'll have laryngitis for my show tomorrow. It's okay. So you really can? You can hear me? I am blessed with a good voice, but I don't know if you can hear me all the way in the back. I'm sorry?
I sit in the back, can they hear you?
Well, they didn't, you can't? You are okay? Okay, fine. Anyway, I was saying, whenever I am introduced and I get this wonderful ovation in the beginning, I'm a little intimidated because I always think I can only disappoint you now. I almost prefer to be booed when I get up and then, hopefully pleasantly surprised. The other one is a little dark. I have very dark humor. Dark humor keeps me sane. And, was that for me, the mic, or just curious. So I noticed there were 3 of you who didn't applaud, and I was thinking that in Stalin's time, you'd have been killed. I'm sorry, and it's going to happen eventually elsewhere, but it was, that's what I studied, was communist affairs in my graduate work. And I remember all these stories about Stalin. And by the way, it's very interesting and very sad. I did my graduate work in communist affairs, and I spent a lot of time in communist countries during the Cold War. And when the wall came down, the Berlin Wall came down, I remember thinking, oh, it's a good thing I didn't enter communist affairs for a living. I'd be unemployed. And I really did think that, and then I realized, no, it was the best major I could have had. Because if you understand the left, you understand the last 100 years of the world. I say very often, because I mean it literally, the most dynamic religion of the last 100 years has not been Christianity, has not been Islam, it has been leftism. Leftism has affected Judaism and Christianity far more than they have affected the world, and it's everywhere. It's a good part of what I'm going to talk to you about. First, I just want to say what an honor it was to be introduced by Professor Renstrom, who is a long-time hero of mine, because he has the rarest of good qualities. There are many, thank God, kind people. There are many honest people, but there are very few courageous people. And he is a man of courage, and I'd like you to salute him. By the way, just apropos of that, but not necessarily the talk, I actually gave a talk recently on courage. It was the first time in my lifetime of speaking that I spoke about courage and how to gain it. And it's a talk that you might want to listen to, especially given your youth, because if you don't develop it now, it's hard to imagine when you will develop it. I'll give you one example, and it may hit home in a painful way, and that's not my intent, but I still have to be real. Periodically, I get a call from a parent to my radio show. What should I do? My daughter, my son, is a conservative and knows that if he or she writes what they think on an exam, their left-wing teacher will give them a lower grade. What should I advise my son or daughter? And I don't tell them what to tell their son or daughter. I just tell them what is true. And that is this. I said, look, if your son or daughter is going to compromise their values for the sake of a grade, then what won't they compromise their values for? And that's really the way one has to look at life. It is better to get into a less prestigious graduate school, if that's your aim, and keep your honor, than compromise your honor and get into a more prestigious school. Prestigious schools means nothing anyway, nothing. I have a particular anger at our universities because I love learning, and what the left has done to higher institutions of learning is unforgivable. So I'm going to talk to you about what the left has done. And I want to make something clear that I'm not talking about liberals. Liberalism and leftism have nothing in common. Leftism is as anti-liberal as it is anti-conservative. In fact, it's primarily anti-liberal. But the only liberals left are conservatives. I was raised a liberal. What else could I be? I'm a New York Jew. So on my birth certificate, and they still listed gender, they actually thought it was an objective reality. And I don't say that sarcastically, that's just the way it is. But it also has party, Democrat. So it has male and Democrat on my birth certificate. So of course that's the way I grew up, and eventually I became a Republican in 1980 or 82. And I have often asked myself, how do I think differently? I'm known as a conservative. And how have my values changed since I was liberal? And I realized that with only one exception, my values are identical. And the one exception is the size of government. Ronald Reagan convinced me that government is not the solution, it is the problem, and I believe that 100%. The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. The bigger the government, the more the corruption. The bigger the government, the worse everything is ultimately. People are reduced as the government gets bigger. This was the only country founded to have limited government. No other country on earth was founded with the principle of limited government. The left is undoing the American Revolution. And by the way, while they don't say it that way, because it won't be popular, it will be popular eventually, but it's not popular yet. What they do say is they want to fundamentally transform America. And this is very important for you to understand. The left wants to fundamentally transform the United States. Those of us who think it is the finest experiment ever created socially are frightened by this, and we will, like I do, I will fight them until I die. Because either the left wins or the American experiment wins. It's one or the other. And the very fact that Barack Obama said 5 days before he was elected in 2008, give it to me please.
We are 5 days away.
We are 5 days away from fundamentally transforming the United States of America. And the cheer that went up from his overwhelmingly white middle-class audience, that's what's depressing. That Barack Obama, a man of the left, wants to fundamentally transform America elicits from me a yawn. But that tens of thousands of middle-class Americans cheered that, that's scary. And then, of course, my favorite point on this is that the left, well, I don't even know if they do anymore, but they claimed they were insulted if you ever imply that the left doesn't love America. I have two responses to that. I have three responses. One is, I can never judge a person's heart. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But on pure logic, it would seem impossible for the left to love America because you don't love what you want to fundamentally transform. Most of you are not married. I hope you all get married, by the way. I will talk about that. But some of you are, and even if you are not, I think you could well understand this point. If you heard a husband say, you know, I love my wife, but I would like her to be fundamentally transformed. I think you'd be skeptical. or vice versa. Oh, I love my husband, but I would like to fundamentally transform him. It's an absurdity. Then you don't love him. It's not possible to love what you want to fundamentally transform. It's not possible. It is logically an absurdity. You love an image, but not the reality. This is the other point I wanted to make is the world's left loathes America. So the American left would have to argue we are the one exception to the left all around the world. We're the only left that loves America, which is also a logical absurdity because the American left has everything in common with the French left and the German left and the Japanese left and the Uruguayan left. They're united, just as Marx envisioned. They are truly united. A nationality means nothing. Left is left is left is left. So I just want to make the point one more time. I'm talking about the left, not liberals. And again, most liberals today are conservatives. I'll give you one example that is, I want you to try to remember. If anyone says, what's the difference between the left and a liberal? Just use the example of race. When I grew up, a liberal, the liberal position was that race doesn't matter at all, and that anyone who said it did was definitionally a racist, which is entirely accurate. To the extent that you believe race is important, that is how much you are a racist. That's the definition of racism. The belief that race is significant. Race is objectively as significant as shoe size. That's how it should be regarded. But for the left, it is extremely significant, to the point that I just spoke about this on my radio show today, that at Harvard, they are having next week a black graduation. A black graduation. Why is Harvard, now I'd say maybe Harvard can't stop it, although it's a private school, but why is it the president of Harvard saying we don't allow racism on our campus? We don't want a white graduation, we don't want a Latino graduation, we don't want a brown graduation, we don't want a black graduation. You are a Harvard graduate, end of issue. And the reason is that to be a college president is not to be a strong person. Part of the curriculum vitae is cowardice. You cannot be elected a college president unless you are a coward. This is true at the UC system, and it is true at Harvard. They stand for nothing. Nothing. It is frightening. It is not possible to overstate what has happened at the campus. The left says that there is a culture of rape. That is a lie. What there is a rape of the culture. That is what exists. The culture is raped. I mean, it's a regular phenomenon. University of Pennsylvania, another Ivy League institution, at the Department of English, they took down the mural of William Shakespeare. They put up some woman poet that no one ever heard of. Why? See, until now, his picture was up because he was considered the finest writer in the English language, right? That's why his picture was up. But to the left, his picture was up because he was a white European male. There is no, the concept of excellence is a conservative concept, not a left-wing concept. The left judges the world not by good and bad, not by excellent and inferior. No. Rather, it is by white and black, race, gender, class. Christianity has a trinity, and the left has a trinity. By the way, a lot of trinities around. It's very interesting. You all know the Christian Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, or Holy Ghost. The left has a trinity, race, gender, class. America has a trinity. It's on every one of your coins. Liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum. Judaism has a trinity, God, Torah, Israel. So it's fascinating that these trinities are a way of understanding the world. But the left-wing trinity is race, gender, class. Here you are at UC, a branch of the University of California. So I cite constantly, I don't know how many of you are aware of it, the official list of microaggressions. Are you familiar with that? At the University of California. When I tell this to people outside of California, it is, I know that I am stretching my credibility. Because and I mean it, I see their faces and I perceive he can't be serious. And I give this example. It is on the list of examples of racist comments, microaggressions. And that is anyone who says there is only one race, the human race. Isn't that amazing? That's the quintessential liberal ideal. The quintessential Judeo-Christian ideal, because we're all children of God. Of course there's only one race, the human race. But if you say that at this campus, you're considered a racist. It's sick. Leftism is not just a destructive phenomenon, it is a pathologic one. To say that that is racist involves a mind that has been literally perverted. That is the most beautiful thought possible, that the only race that matters is the human race. And yet if you say that at this campus, you're considered a racist. There is now, I forgot what campus, but I don't remember. It doesn't matter what campus, but I just don't remember the name. They gave out another brochure, this is all over the place, where if you, something to the effect that if you look a black student, if you stare at a black student when you're talking to them, when you look them in the eye. Oxford? Oh, Oxford, there you go, Oxford. Well, see, this is not just in the US. This is in Australia, Canada, Britain. Then that's racist. So, or how about this? You probably heard this, right? If you say to somebody who has an accent, "Where are you from?" Did you know that that's racist and xenophobic? To show you how sick being on the left is, it's literally, it's humanly sick. It is one of the nicest things you can ask somebody. It shows you're interested in them. And I live in hotels. I am on the road constantly. I make it my business to ask the chambermaid in the hall, who always has an accent, "Where are you from?" They delight in telling me where they are from, because it means I'm interested in them as a human. It is so upside down. Leftism is anti-human. It's cruel. It is kind to ask people, "Where are you from?" When I speak French in France or Morocco or other French places, I want them to say, "Where are you from?" I don't have a great French accent. It's better than most Americans. I don't say France, but nevertheless, it's still an accent. There's no question. I want them to say, "Where are you from?" It's great. I can tell you where I'm from. We can have a conversation. You have to understand, it's all upside down. It's the left that is mean. It is the left that is not human. Now, again, not liberals, leftists, because everything I just said, a liberal would agree with me. But again, liberals today are conservatives. That's why you must come out of the closet. It's very tempting to hide who you are. I admit it's effortless for me. Effortless. I'm a talk show host. I'm paid to say who I am. I admit that. For you, it's much harder. You may lose friends, and I have something to say about that as well, to buffer my point about how cruel the left is compared to the right. You may lose friends. You may alienate relatives. And I don't want you to stick it in their face. Well, with friends maybe, but not relatives. I really want you to try to keep loving relations with your families, but it's not good. Most, right now in America, I would say half of those who support President Trump do so utterly quietly. Do you know a captain? This is amazing. It was hilarious. Periodically, captains will come out and get a selfie with me, and I'm always flattered by that, because I want him to be very happy when he flies the plane. And so they'll come out. So one of them recently whispered to me, I'm a Trump supporter. Because he probably doesn't want to tell the guy on the other seat in the cockpit, or the woman in the other seat in the cockpit. He doesn't know how they, for all he knows, they are also a Trump supporter. But people, nobody hides. Has anyone ever had to go, you know, I support Hillary Clinton. Right? Nobody. Because even if you tell a Trump supporter, they'll say, okay, fine. What else is new? They don't immediately assume you're vile. We assume you're foolish, but we don't assume you're vile. It's a big difference. It was foolish to support Hillary Clinton, but it wasn't necessarily vile. But they think we're vile. They have to. And this is another very important point. If you understand this, you are halfway to understanding the most important phenomenon to understand today, and that is leftism. It is feelings-based, it is not reason-based, and it is not intellect-based, and it is not fact-based. That's the reason that they need safe rooms. We don't. Why do they? Because it's feelings-based. How do you feel is everything. My feelings are hurt. If you saw what happened at Yale, where these professors were eventually had to leave Yale because they said it's okay if you wear Latino costumes for a Halloween party. This is, by the way, another new idiocy. Cultural appropriation. What the hell is that about? Cultural appropriation. Do any of you eat bagels? I want you to know, as a Jew, I'm offended. You've appropriated my culture, you didn't ask my permission. I do not want to see any of you having bagels, let alone with cream cheese and lox. That's downright anti-Semitic. Again, it's an idiocy. Do you understand? They're idiots. It's a compliment. It's a compliment to take culture, to take parts of cultures from others. It's a compliment. No, where does it end? It doesn't end. They live in the world of the absurd. It is every day I report the world. It's like entering the Twilight Zone to deal with the left. You live in the Twilight Zone at UCLA. All day you should be humming. I don't know how you know. I really don't. No wonder you're happy I showed up. Oh my God, a non-Looney Tune has come to talk to you. I don't know how you deal with it. It's hard for me to deal with it. I just report on what you live, but you live it. And they take themselves seriously. It's all feelings, and it begins at a very early age. My older son, who's now 30, it's always embarrassing me when I don't know, 34, thank you. Well, at least my wife knows, that's helpful. You're all curious now, right? All right, Sue, say hi. Sue, who is to the right of me, that was a joke. That was a joke. Some of you might think there's someone to the right of him, but I guess you didn't find that funny. But are you to the right of me?
Yeah.
Some things.
Like what? Okay. She said we'll talk about it later. That's a very bad sign. Okay, why do you have an extra bed? Anyway, what was the point that I was up to? My wife happily distracts me. Yes, my son. My son was, he was 3 when this happened. He was in a park here in LA, in Beverly Hills as it happens, and a kid came over. I didn't see it, his mom did, his prior wife. And so, with whom I'm very close, I might add. But a kid came over, like 5, 6 years old, and just threw my son, who was about 2, I say 3, I think it was closer to 2, just threw him down. It was just a totally mean act. His mother came running over to him, and this is what she said. Honey, what's troubling you? What's troubling you? The kid should have been whacked. Okay? That's what even though I didn't spank my kids, I think if my kid would have done that, I would have whacked my kid. The most powerful way I could send the message that what the kid did was evil and completely unacceptable is the way I would do it. Instead, she asked her son, how are you feeling? What's troubling you? That's in the micro and the macro, feelings are everything. If they're more important than morality, they're more important than facts. How do you feel about it? And so the kids, if you see the Yale video, it's on the internet, the kids are surrounding these professors and they're crying. They're mostly girls, and they're crying that their feelings were hurt. And I'm thinking, we're producing whips. The home of the free, the land of the free and the home of the brave is no longer the land of the free and the home of the brave. It's the land of the easily offended. 50% of your generation now, according to Pew Research, does not believe in free speech when it involves hate speech, which is, of course, idiocy. Just idiocy. So when do they believe in free speech? When it involves love speech? The whole point of free speech is that it's speech you don't like. Everybody's for free speech that they like. Who's against it? Communist China allows free speech that they like too. But if you advocate for Tibet, they call it hate speech. The whole point is that it's speech that you don't like that has to be free. Every area of life that the left touches, it poisons. Every area. If you understand these things and you understand the feelings-based nature of it, I'll come back to more of the poisoning, but I want the feelings part is very important. Let me tell you, here's an anecdote that'll help. There is a very prestigious prep school, high school prep school in the LA area. I won't say the name, it's not important, but just trust me. And the conservative kids at the handful of conservative kids at this school did whatever they could to bring me, they worked very hard to bring me to the campus. And somehow or other, they did. My wife was present, she could tell you this is exactly how it happened. So we arrived that afternoon, and about 6 kids greet us, wonderful young people. And they say, well, Mr. Prager, so what's your topic going to be? And I said, happiness. And they were crestfallen. They had worked feverishly to raise funds, to get permission to have me come. And they were sure I would make the case for conservatism, because it's never made at their high school. And I'm going to talk on happiness. I'm going to blow the opportunity for kids to hear, finally, from a conservative. And I said, look, I know you wonder why. I promise you, it's the best thing I could talk about. I've written a book on happiness. I have an hour on happiness every week on my show for now the last 18 years. And I've spoken about happiness all over the world. It's a very important subject to me morally as well as psychologically. Well, sure enough, I gave the speech. And exactly as I predicted, it was the most controversial speech I could give. Now you'll say, why? How could a speech on happiness be controversial? And I'll tell you why. Because a major theme of my approach is this. You have a moral obligation to act happy, even if you don't feel happy, because you cannot subject others to your bad moods. Just like you wash away bad breath and bad body odor, you wash away bad moods. Okay? So those who think, well, but that's inauthentic, well, smelling good is also inauthentic. Okay? Nobody smells like soap when they wake up. You smell nice or perfumed or cologne or whatever you use because you put it on, and it's not natural. So too, a good acting happy is not necessarily natural, but it's your moral obligation. You owe it to everyone in your life. And I added, there's another thing here. Nobody gives a damn about how you feel. Everybody gives a damn about how you act. That's life. Hello, time to grow up. People don't care how you feel. Maybe your mother does, and maybe your therapist does. But the other 7,900,862,443 people don't give a damn about how you feel. That, my friends, is the most anti-left-wing idea you can espouse. Nobody cares how you feel, they all care how you act, which is the essence of morality. That's the essence. And so it turned out I was right. Because the moment you think my feelings don't matter nearly as much as my behavior, you are on your way to leaving the left. I guarantee you, I've dealt with this an entire life. The moment you don't think your feelings are that important, you are leaving the world of the left. The more you think your feelings matter, the more immersed you are in the left. It is pure, undiluted narcissism. I am the center of the world. How I feel matters. Here's news. How you feel only matters to you. That's it. How you act is everything. Feelings are the determinative element on the left. That is why they take positions that feel good but don't do good. Like minimum wage. It feels good to advocate a higher minimum wage. That more people are unemployed as a result doesn't matter to the left. It is irrelevant. That's just a fact, but it feels good to raise the minimum wage. It feels good to make sanctuary cities for illegal immigrants. Amazing, amazing. The New York Times published an article today. I almost thought I was in the Messianic age. But I had entered an eschatological era. It had a long article about what happened in Maryland in the last couple of weeks. No sanctuary cities or counties were declared because legal immigrants from third world countries opposed it. They were stunned. All the liberals who live in their gated communities were all stunned that these legal immigrants didn't want more crime and didn't want people to get ahead of the line when they worked so hard to come to America. There's no more sanctuary cities, at least in these counties, in Maryland, one of the most liberal states in the country. But it feels good to make a sanctuary because I feel great about myself. I care about the destitute. I am not xenophobic like the right wing. It's all a matter of feelings. How you feel about yourself is what matters. Whether you do good is secondary to feeling good. These are just a handful of the aspects and why that speech was so powerful at that school. Those kids were affected. I was told by the school it was the most controversial speech ever given at the school. Teachers, it was fascinating. Teachers yelled at me. The teachers were angrier than the kids. The kids were disturbed because they had never heard it. But teachers were angry that a man would come into their university, or their campus, high school campus, and say feelings were less important than behavior. I'll never forget, one guy got up, a teacher in the arts department, and he said, he was livid. He was truly livid. I'm surprised he didn't curse me. And he just said, what are you talking about? We need unhappiness. Isn't that great? We need unhappiness. That was a new one, I got to admit. I thought I had heard more or less everything that was to be said on happiness. We need, why? Because it's the unhappy who produce great art. No, that's a common legend, that they're unhappy. Well, he really didn't realize he started with the wrong guy, because he said, take Mahler. I'm sure he thought I'd never heard of Mahler. So I then recited him all the keys of the 9 Mahler symphonies, but except for the 10th, which is unfinished, and told him that I conduct periodically. I know music very, very well. I'll be conducting at the Walt Disney Hall, by the way, in August. And so I know, thank you. You should applaud the orchestra for having me. But in any event, it's not the LA Philharmonic, but it's the Santa Monica Symphony, which is even more remarkable, but that's another story. I salute that. It'll be a wonderful night. You should come. My task is to make you fall in love with classical music. Anyway, so he said Mahler. Well, Mahler, was unhappy, and that's why he wrote great music. But as it happens, first of all, Mahler's a mixed bag. Mahler, yes, everybody has unhappiness. Everybody. But Beethoven, in his unhappiest period, wrote some of his happiest music. And in his happy periods, also wrote great music. And Haydn was happy, except his marriage was awful. Believe it or not, Haydn's wife wrapped fish with some of his symphonic manuscripts. Right, I know it's painful. He's my man, Haydn. I'm conducting Haydn, and it really hurts me. May I just say that the conductor of Haydn has a much better wife than Haydn had. Just want to, for the record, I just want to make that clear. But you gotta laugh at some of these things. Poor Haydn, I mean, to have such a thing in his life. Everybody has unhappiness, everybody has happiness. Now that I'm on the arts, let me tell you another area that the left has poisoned. Let me give you an example, all right? Before leftism conquered the arts, there was a belief that art should elevate the artist and the viewer or listener. That the purpose of great art was to elevate. With the left-wing takeover of the arts, the purpose of the arts is to bother, annoy the bourgeoisie, the middle class, the capitalist, etc. So therefore, there's a tremendous amount of scatological art now. Scatological means relating to urinating and defecating, and anything else. Well, that's primarily it. They also have a great deal of menstrual art, but that's not scatological. It's just another secretion that they're in love with. And I'll give you just a couple of examples. In front of the Orange County Museum of Art, here in Southern California, is a gigantic sculpture of a dog, and the dog is permanently urinating on the museum, or at the museum entrance, which is appropriate now that I think of it. Nevertheless, isn't that something? Think about that. A peeing dog. Here's another one for you. Guggenheim Museum, one of the most prestigious museums in the world in New York City, just had a new exhibit put in. It is a golden, literally all gold toilet bowl. That takes a great deal of talent, doesn't it? I mean, think about it. It takes talent to think it up, but beyond that, it doesn't take any talent. It takes money, but not talent. Anyway, it works. It's a working toilet. You pay, the consumer, the visitor to the museum pays money, they use the toilet, they flush the toilet, they leave. Guess what the name of the exhibit is? America. Okay? So you can literally piss on America. That's at the Guggenheim Museum. You have no idea how, wherever the left takes over the arts are truly raped. They become junk. See the Prager University video on modern art. It's one of the most popular we ever produced. The guy who does it, Robert Forzak, is an artist. So he did something with his students. He showed them two things. He said one of them was a Jackson Pollock student, and a Jackson Pollock type artist, and the other one, what was it, original Jackson Pollock? Was that what it was? Yeah. So comment on it. Tell us which you think is the student and which is Jackson Pollock. So they all wrote these very intelligent sounding dissertations on these two things that he showed them. For those of you who don't know Jackson Pollock would stand on a ladder and throw paint on a giant canvas, and his paintings go for tens of millions of dollars. Okay? Some people think this is great art, others think it's a naked emperor. I'm in the latter category. It's a naked emperor. Anything that, generally speaking, my belief is if I can do it, it's not art, or not great art. But anyway, he threw paint with greater facility than other paint throwers, and he goes for 80 million bucks. Turns out that he played a trick on them. One of them was his apron, and where he wipes his brushes on. And I don't remember what the other one was, but the point is, they were analyzing basically an apron with paint on it from his brushes that he cleans, because it's no way to tell the difference. He ends his video in front of a white canvas that's up at some museum, I think in Toronto. It's just white. I think it's, I don't remember what it's called. Maybe it's just called white. Maybe, I have no idea. Maybe it's called black because it identifies as white. Do you understand? I mean, I can spend truly the rest of the evening and through the week showing you how every area of life has been poisoned by the left. Religion is another example after the arts. What's happened to mainstream Christianity, to mainstream Protestant Christianity, mainstream Catholicism, and non-Orthodox Judaism, it's just a scandal. Donald Trump won the election. There were rabbis, and left-wing rabbis in the United States who fasted. As a Jew, I can't tell you, I wrote a piece on this for the Jewish Journal of Los Angeles, where I drive the readers a little crazy, or more than a little, but I wrote, it was a chilul Hashem. The greatest sin in Judaism is to desecrate God's name, is to act despicably in the name of God. That's despicable behavior in God's name. Man never fasted after 9/11. Didn't fast after 1,000 Israelis were butchered by bombs. Or the 500,000 in Syria. He fasted after Donald Trump won. Then the Pope, I mean, I'm sorry if you're Catholic, but if I'm an equal opportunity lawyer of the religious, I don't know what I'm going to tell you. The Pope was asked on the airplane coming from Poland, where he was at the World Youth Day for Catholic youth around the world in Poland. It was 5 days after a Catholic priest had his throat slit by an Islamic terrorist, who, as he cut the priest's throat, was yelling Allahu Akbar. So a French Catholic on the plane from the French Catholic news agency said to the Pope, Holy Father, I'm just curious, how come you never speak out against Islamic terrorists? And this was his answer. I paraphrase, but you can get the exact answer from, I wrote an article on it, or you can just find it outside of my article. Anyway, the Pope responded, why would I do that? Do I criticize, do I attack every baptized Catholic in Italy who kills his girlfriend? Do you follow the Pope's answer? He's equating a baptized Catholic in Italy who kills his girlfriend with people who massively murder en masse in the name of their religion. Do baptized Catholics kill their girlfriends while holding a cross and saying the Lord's Prayer? I mean, what is he talking about? I could give you example after example of things the Pope said, but the Pope is a man of the left. He's from Argentina. Latin America is leftist, and that's what's he steeped in. And for the mainstream Protestant churches, which are just closing down, because if you want to attend a meeting of the Democratic National Committee, go to the Democratic National Committee. You don't have to go to your Presbyterian church. PCUSA finally takes a resolution to economically strangle a country. North Korea? Nope. Iran? Nope. Israel. Presbyterian Church USA. That's what it took. That's what its policy is. Whatever the left touches, it poisons. And finally, America, of course. This country has flaws. And how could it not? It's composed of humans, and every human has flaws. But it's the country that has done the most good for humanity of any country that has ever existed, to the best of my knowledge. My best example, by the way, is the Korean War, which is probably unknown to the vast majority of you. In the early 1950s, Americans lost 37,000, mostly men in Korea, fighting the communists of Korea. Do you know how bad North Korea is? It is a literal hellhole. It is a living concentration camp, North Korea. All of Korea, the whole peninsula, would be like North Korea if 37,000 American men didn't give up their lives. Therefore, the bottom half is free, and is one of the most productive places in the world. I drove here in a South Korean luxury car. There are no North Korean luxury cars. There are no North Korean non-luxury cars. Why did we do that? Why did America fight in Korea? Because this was liberals, this was Harry Truman. It was John Kennedy who had our troops and Lyndon Johnson, liberal Democrats who had them in Vietnam. By the way, for the same reason. I'm sure you've all been taught how terrible the immoral America was going into Vietnam. But we went into Vietnam for the same reason we went into Korea, to save at least half the country from communism. The greatest mass murdering movement in the history of the world, including the Nazis, in terms of sheer numbers. That's what America does. We die for others' liberty. Did America have slavery? Yes. Is it despicable? Yes. However, if you're at all morally sophisticated, you never ask, why did America have slaves? It's a meaningless question. Everyone had slaves. Every culture on earth had slaves. The only intelligent question, therefore one unlikely to be asked at the university, is who ended slavery, not who had slavery. Who had slavery? Everyone. Who ended slavery? The Judeo-Christian West ended it, and only the Judeo-Christian West. Only. You'll never hear that, I don't think, in a single class at this university. It's a stupid question, why did America have slavery? It's a meaningless question. It's why did it end it? Why did Britain end it? Why did France end it? Nobody else did. That's same with poverty. Poverty is normal. Poverty is universal. Only one thing has ever conquered poverty: capitalism. Not socialism. Socialism has never ended poverty. Capitalism has raised billions of people from poverty. But the left doesn't care about raising billions of people from poverty. It cares about feeling good about itself. And it feels better to sound like an egalitarian than to do good. Socialism spends the money that capitalism creates. If you want a quick definition of socialism, that is what it does. It spends the money that capitalism creates. Does capitalism create inequality? No. Liberty creates inequality. People are free to spend as they wish. I do not resent the fact that some shortstops make 10 times the amount that I do. I can live with it. Even worse, they make 20 times, 30 times the amount some teachers make. Is that fair? I don't know what fair means. Is it fair that a shortstop makes more than a teacher? Well, more people can teach than play shortstop. That's just the way it works. So in a free society, shortstops make more money. So what? Why is that bad for me that a shortstop makes more money or a CEO makes more money? Well, unless I am a deeply, deeply envious human being, which is my moral problem. What's the problem? Why is inequality bad? On this campus, it's taken as a given it is bad because it's a neo-Marxist campus. The left hates inequality. It doesn't love prosperity. It loves equality. That's why so many leftists went to Venezuela to celebrate the socialist revolution in Venezuela. And now their dream has come true. People are all lining up for toilet paper. The dream has come true. The rich are also lining up for toilet paper in Venezuela. So these are just a few of the themes that I wanted to bring to your attention. And I will conclude with the acronym that I came up with many years ago, SIXHIRB, SIXHIRB. This is their response to whatever they differ with. Sexist, intolerant, xenophobic, homophobic, Islamophobic, racist, and bigoted. They don't battle you with ideas. They battle you with dismissive names. Because they can't battle our ideas. It would be awesome to battle with ideas. But whenever you differ with someone on the left, whether it's Facebook or in your classroom, you're just called a name. That's it. Who's going to debate a racist? And I agree, by the way. If someone said to me, Dennis, we'd like you to debate somebody from the Ku Klux Klan, I probably would say no. What is there to debate about? They actually think that blacks are inherently inferior? What am I going to stand there and say you're wrong? I don't want to even give them the right time of day. So that's what they do to us. Why debate you? You're all these bad things. I said this was my last point, but I do have one other. I said I wanted you to get married. So I don't want to forget this point. Another thing that the left has poisoned is the lives of millions of people, including men and women, through another one of its vehicles that sounds great, feminism. Who's against female equality? I have yet to meet somebody who breathes who is against female equality. I mean, please, give me a break. We're not living 100 years ago. Okay, and the truth is, vast numbers of people believed in female equality, but not female sameness, female equality. Throughout history, there were many who didn't, many who did. But what it really did, the damage it did, I'll give you one example. It said all it wanted to do was give women a choice. If they want to make a family, get married and make a family, and that's their primary work, we feminists have no issue. We just want women to have a choice. But that's disingenuous. They really don't have great respect for women who opt out of the labor market to take care of a home. They consider it demeaning. That what has happened as a result, it goes beyond that. Yours is the least marrying generation in Western history. Vast numbers of you won't marry till a very late age, and some of you will, more than ever, will not marry at all. I think that's a tragedy for you and for society. It is good to marry. It is good to have children. It is good for you. It isn't easy. I said it's good for you, not easy for you. It is good for you. It is good for them. The number of women that have called my show, I've been broadcasting for 35 years. The number of women who have called my show, I would say from the age of 40 onward, who have said as follows: Dennis, I just want to tell you I was sold a bill of goods when I was in college. I was told, you may not have heard this phrase, very famous one from the beginnings of modern feminism, a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. It's a very funny line, by the way. I think it is funny. But that was a famous feminist line for my generation. A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. So the women understood, I don't need a man. There's no reason that I should try to marry now. I should pursue a career. That will bring me joy. So here, let me tell you something. The number of people who get great joy from their career is not very high. Most work is ultimately drudgery. Okay? Most work is. There are some very sexy forms of work. I have one, I admit it. I get paid very well to speak to millions of people about what I believe. You know how many of us there are who have a national daily radio show during the day when radio is listened to? About 20. 20 out of 300 million is a very small figure. Okay, most people don't have such exciting work. Most people, like my brother who loves his work, he's a professor of medicine at Columbia University, but after his 42,000th bronchoscopy, he had pretty much had it with bronchoscopies. Okay? The 43rd thousandth bronchoscopy isn't exciting. It's just the way it is in life. And he has exciting work compared to most. So let me tell you, especially to young women here, because life is not fully fair, I'll just say this to the women. If you meet a good guy now, don't let him go. Okay? You can always have a career, but great guys don't grow on trees. All right? That's the truth. And if you don't believe me, ask your single aunt, who's 48, what it's like going on Match.com. Right? Because the pickings are slimmer at 48 than at 23. That's just the way it works. I have a sister-in-law. How old is your sister?
47.
47, perfect. I have a 47-year-old sister-in-law who would like to meet a guy, and it's the story she tells us about the guys she finds, and there are some wonderful men out there, but some of them, like the guy who sent her a photo of himself in diapers. This was not impressive, I have to say. He's not date material. That's I hate to rush to judgment, but that's just my read of that particular picture. Now, not all, believe me, not all guys who are 55 and single are in diapers. I fully understand that. There are a lot of wonderful men at that age, I know, but there are a lot who aren't. But you're not told this. If a girl got up, you would know this better than I. If a girl your age, 20, 21, got up in a class, imagine a women's studies class, and said, you know what, I love a career, but my greatest dream is to meet a wonderful man, marry him, and have children. Had you said you had Ebola, you would not be regarded so darkly. This is sick stuff. This is sick stuff. And guys, you know the least popular video we ever produced at Prager University? And we have, this year we'll have 350 million views. So it's a lot of views. It's a million a day. The least popular of all our videos was the one where a guy, for 5 minutes, they're all 5 minutes, gave a talk on why men should marry. The amount of hatred spewed at that guy by men, is a record for one of our videos. The second most hated was one I gave about God and morality, because the atheists are very angry. You'd think they'd be thrilled, but they're not that happy. But that's a separate issue. But the first one is a big issue. Get married if you meet a good person. Make that a priority in your life. And if you say that you are not ready to get married, I have a great secret from someone much older than you. You will never be ready. How do you get ready? That's absurd. What do you practice? How do you get ready to get married? Ever practice marriage? There's no way you can't be ready. I just want you to know. You know when you're ready? The day you get married? Or the day after? The day after. That's what happens. You know when you're ready to have kids? When they come. Who's ready to be a parent? How do you practice that one? That's the way life works. You do it because it's the right thing to do, not because you're ready. It's back to, you probably too have bought the feelings-based thing. Well, when I feel I'm ready, you won't. It doesn't happen. It's like when I used to talk to college kids when I ran a college institute. I would tell them about, you know when you become an adult? When you decide to be. You know how many people my age aren't adults? You know how many children there are in their 60s? I'm not. They're called leftists. No, there was a very childlike aspect, because the whole notion of growing up being an adult is very alien to the left. And of course, there's tremendous hostility to making marriage a priority. But I feel that if I have an audience of college-age people, I would feel guilty if I didn't offer you that final word of advice. And here's my final point. So we've had 3 final points. One final, because there are so many points, because I'm going to drive home and think, oh, why didn't I tell them this? Why did I tell them this? But this is very important. I went to a religious Jewish school called yeshiva, till I was 18. I was steeped in religious Jewish life. And I often think, what was the biggest difference between my religious education and a secular education? And by the way, this holds true for kids in Christian schools, Mormon schools, Catholic schools. It's across the board. And I realize this is the single greatest difference. Kids in regular secular schools, private or public, are taught and have been for decades. The greatest challenge in their life is overcoming the obstacles that America presents to them. Racism, sexism, inequality, you're fighting America. That's what you do. That's what you're taught. I was taught that the greatest challenge in Dennis Prager's life is not America, it's Dennis Prager. Every religious kid is taught that, not Dennis Prager. A lot of secular kids are taught that on their greatest challenge. Religious kids are taught their greatest challenge is themselves, because human nature stinks. Which, by the way, is one of the biggest left-right differences. The left lives in fairy tale land, thinks people are basically good. The right knows how flawed human nature is. These are some of the things you're up against. It means the world to me that you came. Thank you so much. All right, so we'll have a few minutes for questions and answers. You have to leave, I understand it, but we'll only do 10 minutes because the speaker should always leave before the audience does.
So with that, we'll now open up to a few questions. So if you wanted to line up on either side of the aisle, if you had a question, I'm the only one with a microphone, so I'll pass it between you and Mr. Prager. We understand that some inquiries they require prefacing, so we'll allow you to make 60 seconds, ask the question for 60 seconds, and then I'll allow Mr. Prager to speak. So I'll go both between the aisles.
With all the respect in the world, is it better to marry young and divorce and marry again than to wait and be sure you want to marry?
Having been divorced, I can have some expertise in this arena. It is much better, this I can say, it is much better to marry and divorce than never to marry. That's really the only fair way to put it, because the way you posed it is more, obviously it is better to marry right than marry wrong. We all are in agreement on that. But I personally think it is much better to have lived non-safely and fully than to live safely and not fully. It's like people who called my show and said, I don't agree with you, Dan, I agree with you on everything, but I have no desire to marry again. I had a terrible divorce. So I said, I'm just curious, if you had a terrible car crash, would you ever drive again? I don't see any difference between a terrible car crash and a terrible divorce. You either lead a full life or you don't lead a full life. Now, if you marry now, I assume that you believe that this is a wonderful person and good for you. By the way, how do you know if it's a wonderful person? So on the internet, one of my columns is 8 questions you should answer, or questions you should answer before you marry. A lot of people wrote me they broke up after reading the article. And I did a great job. But there are ways of trying to figure out, is this a good person or not? one of my rules of thumb is see how they treat the waiter or waitress. That's a very good little, there are many others as well. But I believe that, first of all, one final word on this subject. Long marriages are the product of work. Happy marriages are the product of good luck. My parents were married 69 years, together 73 years. You think they knew at 19 and 18 respectively that, gee, they'll be great when we're 86? I don't think so. They were lucky, because I'm not sure who could have married either of my parents. By the way, that is said with utter love in their memory, and they would have laughed themselves silly if they heard me say it, just for the record, and then said he's right. So it's mostly luck anyway. So good luck.
Yeah, I started college here in 1965 as a Goldwater Republican. And I was here during the 60s, the Vietnam protests, the whole thing. And I was in a fraternity and we had a lot of fun, but the campus life and the political science classes and the history classes I took changed me completely. I was here through all of it. And the fraternity guys that I was with, we actually fought some guys from Berkeley who came down here and tried to start a protest against Vietnam. That was 1967. But 1968 was when things began to change, big time. We had the 2 assassinations, we had the Chicago Democratic Convention, and by the fall quarter in 1968, the campus had gone from, well, center right to far left. That's exactly what happened, and I was here to see it all. And by the time I graduated, I was on the 7-year plan. Back in the day, you could do that. And I was a McGovern Democrat. And boy, was I proud of being a McGovern Democrat. And I stayed that way until the mid-90s when I discovered Dennis Prager and Michael Medved and Larry Elder. And I went, oh my goodness. And my life is much better now. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hi Dennis, thank you so much for coming. It was very refreshing to hear you and also very funny. I don't think I've laughed that much in the past week.
By the way, we laugh more.
That's true. So my question relates to truth. And I appreciated your discussion of the duality between leftism and the right. But I believe that if we approach the world with the question of what is true and how can we know what is true, then we will find ourselves in perhaps the most intellectually stable position there can be. I was wondering if you could speak to what rubric should we use to judge and assess other ideas, other concepts that we may encounter that you haven't even discussed, to not judge necessarily whether something is left or right, but whether it is true.
I am troubled by the fact that you are really the products of what they call the postmodern mode of thinking, Foucault and others, where they don't even really believe that there's truth. But they don't know what they believe really, because on the other hand, if you have any skepticism that the world will come to an end because of carbon emissions, then you're anti-truth and anti-science. By the way, it's a very interesting thing. Just take the anti-science thing. So if like thousands, and there are thousands of scientists, not who say that the world isn't warming. There's pretty much general consensus it's been warming. What there is no overwhelming consensus is why it is warming, and there is no consensus whatsoever that it will lead to extinction of human species or even near extinction. It's just another form of hysteria. Hysteria is a major modus operandi of the left. There's always a hysteria. I wrote in my book, and I really hope you read it. It's 3 books in one. Still the Best Hope: Leftism, Islamism, and Americanism. It really explains this, and I show 11 hysterias of the left that all turned out to be fraudulent. I'll give you one that we just lived through. Remember all the anti-Semitism